Well, good morning, Manna Church. Jeff Christensen here with you one last time. Welcome to part 6, the conclusion of our study of the All-Encompassing Gospel. Throughout this study, we've talked about the power of the gospel in 3 primary ways. We've talked about the gospel and God, how the gospel drives us toward God. We've talked about the gospel and you, or how the gospel changes you. And yesterday, we started talking about the gospel and others, how the gospel leads us to other people. And we're going to continue with that theme today as we focus on living for the kingdom. Living for the kingdom means that we live our lives to honor God because our lives belong to God, like we talked about before. While we could talk about this in any number of ways, I want to look at it 2 different ways today. At first glance, these ways seem to contradict one another, but really they go hand in hand. And the Bible calls us to live with both of these truths in mind. So these truths are this. We're called to live like today is our last day. And we're called to live like we have many years ahead of us. Now you may be thinking, Jeff, how in the world am I supposed to do both of those things at the same time? And that's a valid question, but I promise you these don't contradict. So take a look at this with me. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 and 16 say, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil." The Apostle Paul tells us here, hey, life is full of problems and distractions and things that want to pull our eyes off of God. So be focused. Make the best use of your days. God calls us to live with urgency, to have our eye on making the biggest impact we can in the lives of others right now, in your circle of relationships, especially those closest to you. Don't put off until tomorrow what you should do today, because none of us is promised tomorrow. This could be it, all we get today. And if we knew that today was it, if we knew that after this it was just on to eternity, how would we live the day? What would we prioritize? And what can we take from that now and apply to how we live today? So live with urgency, like today is your last. But along with this, Scripture also calls us to live like we have many years ahead of us. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." Likewise, Proverbs 28:2 says, "When a land transgresses, it has many rulers, but with a man of understanding and knowledge, its stability will long continue." Passages like these tell us that we need to have our eyes on the future and plan ahead. So, in one sense, God calls us to put it all on the line for Him every day, seize every opportunity to share His kindness, be a reflection of Him in every interaction you have with others, especially with those closest to you. And at the same time, God also calls us to be strategic about our choices. We should invest heavily in our closest relationships and plan for the long game. Husbands and wives, serve each other sacrificially every day, because when you do, you're living with urgency and you're also investing in your future together. Parents, pour into your children every day. Make the most of the day with them, but also recognize that you're leading them in a direction that takes time to develop. We want to give ourselves fully to God's work today, but we must do so with wisdom to ensure that we still have something to give tomorrow and all the days after that, should God grant them to us. So ask God for wisdom in this. He's the only one who can give it. He will lead you and direct you in your steps. It's been good to be with you this week, Manna Church. Tune in next week for a new edition of Morning Manna. God bless you.